Hi everyone, so I managed to drop my sculpture the other day. I managed to knock it off the wall. I was trying to move it and went to get it off the little hook it was on, and yeah, managed to drop it. So I'm showing you today how I repair any sculptures that I do break. It's not very often, it is very rare, and this one fell from quite a height, so because obviously the only thing with the polymer clay using and having the foil inside, obviously it's not a big thick layer of clay, and if you've got anything sticking out like this, if you do drop it, you are going to break it. So what I did was I filled up the gap with, I used an adhesive first of all to stick any loose bits down, and then anywhere where clay had come off, I filled it with epoxy sculpt, which is a 2-part epoxy clay. Filled it up, put the little tentacle little suckers back on, and left that to dry for 24 hours. Well, left it to set, and sanded it down a little bit so it was blended in with the surface. And then the next thing to do was to match the colours as best as I can. So the first thing I did was put a layer of black on, because that's what I did when I made the sculpture. And I haven't got the exact eyeshadow that I used to create this metallic effect, but I'll just use some other metallic eyeshadow and try and blend it in. So first of all, what I did was painted any white areas black, and that will make the metallic eyeshadow show up a lot better, and it also blends in the epoxy sculpt, which is like a bright white compared to everything else. And I applied 2 coats over the area that I had filled with epoxy sculpt, because my black, the black paint I've got seems to be a little bit transparent, so like it's not the most opaque. I need to get some that's more opaque, actually, like some more heavy body stuff. So I touched up those areas and then got my heat gun and used that to dry off the paint. You'll see me do that in a second. And the advantage of using the heat gun is obviously it dries a lot quicker, so I can finish the repair quicker, because obviously you can't apply the next layer of colour until the first layer is dry. Otherwise it just turns into like a muddy, mushy mess, and it'll actually lift the black paint off. So what I'm doing here is just plugging in my heat gun, and I'll have to do a video actually, because I've had a move around in my studio and rearranged everything, so I'll do a studio tour at some point. So here I am just using the heat gun just to dry that layer of paint, and because it's not like mega thick, it did dry quite quickly in about sort of 5 minutes max. And then as you're looking at the sculpture, look at it from all different angles, make sure you've painted all the white of the epoxy sculpt if you've used that to repair your sculpture you've dropped. Because obviously I couldn't apply more polymer clay and bake this in the oven, because I've used hot glue to create the dripping, sort of drooling effect on the octopus monster. And obviously if I put that in the oven, it's just going to turn into a puddle of glue and go everywhere, and then I'd have to redo that. So it was easy to do it with epoxy sculpt. And then it was a case of digging around in my drawer for an eyeshadow palette. Obviously I haven't got the exact one that I used when I did this, because I used up the eyeshadow. So what I'm doing is just searching through my drawer for another eyeshadow palette that's old that I can use to roughly match the colours. And if you're wondering, it's the, what do you call them? I can't think of the name of the palette, but it's I've got loads of them. And they're getting on a bit now. So the ones that I've used and are a bit old, I'm using them for effects like this, to create like metallic effects on the models I paint. As long as you put like a layer of sort of like a setting spray type stuff, like I've got this spray that you use when you use pastels. If you use something like that, like a little spray varnish over the top, you can get the colours to stay. So here I'm just using the metallic colours from the palette I've found to touch up and blend in that area as best as I can. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be closer than it was having just these big black lines. I could, if I wanted to, have created like a sort of faded effect where like the tips of the tentacles are black and then it blends into the blue to blend them all in, but because it was such a small area, I didn't want to repaint like a big section of the sculpture just for two little bits, so I just did it this way. So I'm using a mixture of a bluey grey and a pinky metallic colour, because I used it's like a metallic bluey grey and a purple before that I used. So I'm just going over now with that to try and just blend it in and make it not look so noticeable. And once it's up on the wall, no one's going to notice anyway. Like, you'd have to look close to actually see it. And once I did that, then it's just a case of just getting a little touch of white paint and dry brushing over the top, because that's what I did on the original sculpture. So what I'm doing now is just getting my white paint and drying off my brush that I've used, and then you'll see in a bit I dry brush over the top with just a tiny little touch of white, like I did when I originally made the sculpture, and that blends it back in. The advantage of repairing something you've made is obviously you know what paints you use, you know what colours you've used, and you know what finish it's got, so obviously it's easier for you to repair it because it's your own thing and you've already got the materials, unless you've run out of the eyeshadow like I did. So yeah, that's how I repair sculptures if I drop them. This is the first one I've dropped for, let me think. It's got to be a couple of years, so I'm pretty good at not dropping them, and I tend to have them on shelves where they're pushed back a bit so they're not like near the surface where they're going to fall off. So yeah, this is the first one in a long time I've actually broke. And the polymer clay, it is quite hard wearing, quite solid, but obviously if you do drop it from height you are going to break it. I may investigate using something else as an armature eventually, maybe something a bit more rigid than the foil, but we'll see. So yeah, that's how I repaired my sculpture that I broke. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.